Hello, and welcome to the virtual Scandinavia House with today's book talk InnSæi, with author Hrund Gunnsteinsdóttir, and will be moderated by policy researcher Tara McGuinness. As this discussion will examine intuition through the lens of InnSæi and its unique application in addressing our contemporary crisis. InnSæi, Heal, Revive, and Rest with the Icelandic Art of Intuition was published by Bonnier's Books in the UK in 2024 and Harper One in the US in 2025, and has been translated into 14 languages and is available in all 7 continents or 6 continents. I will put a link in the chat function to where one can purchase the book, and you're also welcome to ask questions to Hrund or Tara in the Q&A functions. We'll get to them towards the end of the discussion. This will be recorded and will be made available on our website, scandinavias.org, as well as our YouTube channel. Hrund Gunnsteinsdóttir is an Icelandic writer, thought leader, filmmaker, entrepreneur, and TED keynote speaker. Hrund is the co-director and scriptwriter of the documentary InnSæi, The Power of Intuition, available through Zeitgeist Films in the US. She's designed and directed Prisma, a university diploma program which focuses on mental agility and purpose in the times of uncertainty, which was recognized by the Nordic Council in 2010 for being one of the post-recession education programs that best responds to the 21st century's work market. Hrund has leading roles across a variety of sectors such as investment, innovation, sustainable development, and post-conflict reconstruction with the UN in Europe and Asia. She is advisory council member at Yale International Leadership Center, a Nordic Ignite Angle ambassador, and has been recognized as a Yale World Fellow, World Economic Young Global Leader alumni, and a WEF cultural leader. Tara McGuinness is the founder and executive director of New Practice Labs, where she leads a team of designers, researchers, and project managers working to improve the experiences and outcomes of family economic security and care policies. Her research and policy work is focused on what can help families with young kids thrive. Tara has served as a senior advisor to President Obama, where she was responsible for leading the effort to sign up millions of America for free and low health insurance through Obamacare. It was this deep engagement on the team implementing the Affordable Care Act, both its failures and its turnaround, that sparked her obsession with improving the delivery of government efforts, putting governments and citizens in a tighter feedback loop. Tara is the co-author of A Power to the Public Promise of Public Interest Technology, described by President Obama as worth a read for anyone who cares about making change happen. So please welcome Hrund and Tara to the screen.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you to the Scandinavia House. I could not be more excited to be here with Hrund, whose many skills and leadership capacities have just been extolled, but who is someone who I feel very glad to call my friend. I'm going to encourage our participants today to, since we can't see you, grab a cup of tea. I'm in Washington, D.C., Hrund's in Germany. Pull up a blanket, make this as comfortable as a fireside chat as possible. Grateful that in this digital age, the Scandinavia House creates space for us to do this learning about books. And so, I have a million questions for Hrund. Maybe you have some. Please hold those for a bit. And maybe just to jump into it, for folks who may or may not have read this beautiful book, do you want to give us just like a 101, an entry into InnSæi, its 3 parts, and really what drove you to write the book?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tara. And it's such a joy and a pleasure to be here with you today. And we did literally sit by a fire not so long ago, and we had deep conversations about life and meaning and all these things. Thank you for doing this with me and being here with us. InnSæi is, so let me just take one step back. Over 20 years ago, I went through a period in my life that really dragged me down. I hit a wall. I felt I couldn't find the ground beneath my feet. I didn't know the word burnout at the time, but I just felt like I was collapsing into pieces, and physically my doctor told me I might not ever be able to work full time ever again. I was very low mentally and emotionally, and it basically felt like being in a very dark place. And it turns out the only way out for me was to go inwards. And this is when I start to think about intuition in a different way than I'd ever done before. One thing leads to another, and I go through a healing process that is, let's say, happens on all levels that we can think of as human beings, physically, mentally, emotionally. And intuition becomes a very, very dominant factor in that whole period in my life. And being the curious person I am, I started diving into everything I could find about intuition. And then one thing leads to another. It becomes part of my work and the stuff I do. And I get opportunities to both read stuff in other languages, mostly English, but also to converse with people from all over the world in different capacities, like artists and leaders and scientists and explorers and all the different roles we have and lenses through which we look at the world. And I realized that we have actually quite a few different ways of defining intuition. And this brought me home to my mother tongue, Icelandic. And I saw the Icelandic word for intuition as if for the first time. And it's just so beautiful. So for those of you who don't know, in Iceland, the population is less than 400,000 people. We have our own language, Icelandic, and we want to protect it. We care for it. So every time there's a new invention, a new concept, a new thing that we need to adopt into our culture, we create a new word for it. We don't just take the English word or whatever and put an accent on it. No. So we think about, what does this word mean? Why does it exist? What is it trying to express? So the guy who coined the Icelandic word for intuition in Icelandic, I think, was very wise, because he named intuition InnSæi. And so InnSæi, when I started to just look at the word, I was like, it's like a sculpture. So it's made up of in and sæi. In means inside or into, and sæi means to see or the sea. So the way that we started to sculpt this word and open it up so that it would hold space for everything we know in science and practice and spiritualism, and bring it into one word. We started doing this around the making of the documentary film. We came up with this threefold definition, which is the sea within. And this refers to our ever-flowing unconscious mind, which works way faster than our focused mind and conscious mind does. And the sea within cannot be put into boxes, because then it ceases to flow. And to me, that's like, I love that understanding of the world within us. And then secondly, InnSæi means to see within. So in order to be able to train your intuition, to build your relationship with intuition, understand it, hone it, you need to start with self-awareness, metacognition, the ability to look inside yourself and know yourself well enough to be able to put yourself into other people's shoes, but also importantly, to be able to discern a well-honed intuition from assumptions, biases, fears, and wishful thinking, so not to confuse these. And then lastly, InnSæi means to see from the inside out, and this is what my work also has a lot to do with, is how do we lead from within? How do we lead our lives or organizations from within in the world today? And that is, in short, about navigating the ocean of life and work, whatever condition you're going through, with a strong inner compass. That's the short answer, Tara.
Well, you say in the book, this is such a beautifully written book that I'm actually going to read your own lovely words in a row, because I was struck by them, that words matter. Just as every individual is a universe on their own, so is each word. And I feel this way about you're helping me discover this Icelandic word that I never would have come upon, I think, in the course of my life, but that is richer than an English definition of insight. It holds more things. And, much of the book is about the scanning of multiple types of knowledge in the body and in the brain. I was really moved by kind of the permission of your work to delve into the science. In reading this, I really became clear how much everything from my experiences in the gym to my grade school, college, and workplaces really, really play to the rational brain. But our bodies are collecting data all the time, and we're making connections beyond that. And I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about these two types of intelligence and how they show up. And, as you mentioned earlier, you explored the world from professional athletes to neuroscientists to those who are touching into ancient spiritual wisdom. And so I'd love for, feel free to pull any of these examples of fascinating folks from different walks of life as well.
Yeah, and as I reply to this or reflect on this question, to encourage people who are with us today to note down any questions around that. So most of us are trained in using our analytical, logical, rational mind. Our education systems are based on the ability to replicate exercises and methodologies so that we can learn all over the place, all over the world, replicate, but also to compare and quantify. We all know this is super important for humans to be able to build cultures and societies and cope and let alone thrive. But the other part, without being too dualistic, the other part of our intelligence is really embodied intelligence. So intuition is an embodied intelligence. And one of the things that I have found as my biggest discoveries along the 20 plus years I've been exploring this is intuition is fundamental to our intelligence. It's not just a small part of it. And we actually need good intuition to reason well. But when we go through life, the days, the months, living in our heads, we lose out on all the intelligence that we have inside us. So when I say intuition is an embodied intelligence, it means that we pick up millions of information and data points during every minute of every day with our whole body. And we've talked a lot about the brain, that it's the brain's role is to think and be brilliant. That's not really the main role of the brain. So the main role of the brain is to enable us to move through the day, to be alive, to take one step in front of the other, to make sure the heart is beating and the lungs are helping us to breathe. If we put too much strain on our brain, it makes it harder for it to maintain that role, and let alone help us think creatively and broaden in our horizons and have deep insights and relate, engage with life and connect with other beings. So the more we put a strain on our head and our brains, the less it's able to renew our whole energy. And so it's a big thing. And Tara, our knowledge around this particular thing, intuition, is an embodied intelligence. The way that I've monitored this conversation in the mainstream in the last 2 decades or so is it's very interesting. It's coming out more clearly now in the very last years. In the last 5 years, we have, fortunately, there's a little bit more, at least research and publications around intuition being embodied. And I think for anyone listening who is, for example, working in healthcare or has been dealing with health issues in one way or another, we are beginning to be more researched and open and intellectual about the fact that the mind and body are interconnected. It's all one big ecosystem. And I think that's also the language I like to use around intelligence and intuition is it's an ecosystem intelligence. We can have domain specialization and a really strong intuition in one domain, but in order to practice intuition and apply it to the real life and the world around us, it really, one of the capacities we want to build is to be able to cross-fertilize between different domains and unexpected domains as well. So I could go on, but yeah.
I'm just going to pull this thread of domains. It's very alive in my own work. The team I run brings people from very varied practices, researchers and engineers and designers who are in the deep practice of listening. And I don't think we do this nearly enough, right? We are really very domain oriented in most lines of work, and that has its great purpose. But more and more, in whether it's the innovation of the life-saving vaccine for COVID, required having two domains bump into each other at random and creating mRNA. And so I think there's something I think you've created here that smooths down the walls between a few different bodies of knowledge. I mean, because we live in an age of massive grab for our attention, and the capacity now as a human on Earth to pay attention and access anything is both miraculous and is probably more than our bodies and brains can process, according to neuroscientists. You had one stat in the book that really stuck with me from the Queen's University in Canada, that humans have around 6.5 thoughts per minute. So that's around 6,200 thoughts a day. And that's assuming we sleep 8 hours, and we're discounting the sleep-related thoughts in their particular study. And so this kind of, I want to have a deeper conversation just about attention, especially in this moment where we are. That attention really matters, lots of data about attention degradation, but you pull this attention to a higher level in the book. I think you quote Ian McGilchrist, who says, "The way we pay attention is a moral act, because the kind of attention we pay both changes the world we experience, and only we can know, and it changes ourselves." And I'd love for you to reflect a little bit more about attention. And for those of us who are, on average, I think according to the book, checking email every 2 minutes, and checking our phones more than 200 times a day, and exposed to somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements, according to your research. What advice do you have for those of us who are struggling to focus?
It's a great question. And there's so much in there, what you've just shared. I want to start just with a few sentences, and I guess that's a way for us to just be together in this moment, to think about the words I'm going to use. So to start with, attention is a very scarce resource. We have a very massive $1 trillion market focused with a strong intention to grab our attention, hijack it, to keep our attention as long as possible, doing something that may or may not be useful for us. Our attention is under a lot of strain. And you also mentioned the number of thoughts we have per day. There is also a lot of noise inside our heads. And so attention is a scarce resource, but attention is also the key to intuition. And I want us to go back to the body, the embodied intelligence. So how we pay attention with all our bodies, not just the eyes or ears or the stuff we read. So the way that we immerse ourselves in the world, consciously and unconsciously. So most of our consciousness is unconscious. So there's so much going on that we can't be conscious of. It wouldn't be possible. But nevertheless, it's informing our intuition and how we perceive the world, react to it, and see it. So my message there about how we pay attention is a moral act. Ian McGilchrist has been a big inspiration for me there, as you've mentioned. It's like imagining that you're in a theater. It's pitch dark. You're sitting in the audience alone, and all of a sudden it's pitch dark on the stage, but all of a sudden somebody turns on the spotlight, and you just see this circle of spotlight on the stage. And imagine this spotlight is your focused attention. Now move the spotlight around a little bit, and then you reach the curtains to the right of the stage or whatever. You move it around to the ceiling, and you see this beautiful chandelier or whatever. This is how our attention works. So my message with my work on insight and intuition is to say, it's important that we become the stewards of our own attention. Because for a lot of people, when we sit down and really think about it, with ourselves, for ourselves, to what extent are you the steward of your attention? To what extent are you being eccentric and selective about what you take in? Because what you take in comes out again, consciously and unconsciously. So that is the big act. And another thing that I've also found to be very important to emphasize is that it seems like we are a little bit biased against our own intelligence and intuition. Your intuition has had a really bad reputation for some years. So it's also a question of gaining more confidence and trust in our own intelligence. You know, we have artificial intelligence. We have lots of experts out there telling us what to think and feel and do. I'm saying with my work, I think it's really important that we think about these things and that we take ownership of this steering wheel, so to speak, because it's so easy to lose control and track of our own attention. And even if I've done a film and a study program and a book and lots of seminars around the topic, I am also, I also get trapped in all these things. I know exactly how it is. So it is we need to focus on our attention.
I love that phrase, and I maybe need to just leave a little note next to my laptop or on my front door that's like, you are the steward of your own attention, because it is true that just the demands of this is true for many people, for the families I work with who are low income Americans, the demands on their time and the data on the changing and shifting nature of the workplace really makes it quite difficult. We're living asynchronously from how we've lived. I absolutely adore that. I mean, can I ask you, this is somewhat unorthodox here in a book talk, and maybe we can do this in a matter of minutes, but is there this, what I love about the book is it is both very high-minded, it draws from lots of theoretical practices and tons of data from neuroscientists, and then it has like advice for you to start right now. Is there either a piece of advice for a practice people could take away, or even could you in a moment help call this group into greater presence and attention for the second half of our book talk?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's start with just centering ourselves a little bit, and then I can share 2 or 3 things that people can do as a way to hone and harness their intuition. So in order to be able to train the muscle of intuition, it's important to align with it. And we've laid the ground for reminding everyone that intuition is an embodied intelligence. So let's come home to our body, and it's a way of becoming more present in this moment. So I want to invite everyone, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, and if not, keep them open, but put both feet on the ground. And if you can, and feel the soles on your feet on the ground. And I want to invite you to just put both hands on your thighs and close your eyes. And what I want to invite you to do now is, through our breathing, to really notice how our nervous system becomes more regulated and calmed through the following breathing. And let me just explain briefly. We are going to breathe in on the count of 3. And as we breathe out, we're going to count to 6. But when we do that, we're going to pierce our lips together like this to make it harder for the air to come out. So like it's really hard for the air to come out, and really feel how it affects you. Notice in your body where it affects you. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So if you feel like it, close your eyes and just relax your shoulders. You have both feet on the ground, and notice the soles of your feet on the ground now. And now I want to invite you to take a deep breath on the count of 3. And breathe out on the count of 6, piercing your lips together to make it hard for the air to go out. 3, 4, 5, 6. And we breathe in on 3. 1, 2, 3. And you breathe out on 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you breathe again in your own time, and you notice your body. Allow your body to speak to you. And as you breathe out, make it really hard for the air to get out, to come out of your mouth. No one's watching you, just notice your body and what's happening. And breathe in again for the last time. And breathe out on the count of 6, making it hard for the air to go through your mouth. And whenever you're ready, move your toes a bit. You can open your eyes and come back to here and now. There are 2 things I want to share at this point for people to think about this throughout the day. One is, you don't have to take 1 or 2 hours every day or every week to do InnSæi or intuition. Allow it to be part of your life. So when you're in a meeting, do this breathing, if you can, in a subtler way, I imagine, but put your feet on the ground as well and notice that you do that to be more present. Breathing is important, and also to give your mind and body a rest from the constant noise. You can do that with meditation, mindfulness, or just using your body to engage with instead of the mind. But what I always recommend to people is to journal. You know, we are this type of human that we live a lot in our head, and journaling is really a magnificent tool to first of all understand what's going on in your mind, because we don't know half of these 6,200 thoughts that are swirling around in our head. So I offer 2 types of journaling in my book. One is the stream of consciousness, and the other one is attention journaling. And I really recommend that people do that. I don't know if we want to go more into those types. We can maybe think about that later. But journaling is super important to create space in your head, to reflect. And the ritual of reflecting with a pen or a pencil, because that has more impact on your system and memory and brain than it is to use a keyboard, research shows. So journaling is a way to reflect in a deeper way. It improves memory, and it's also positive for longevity and all these qualities. And it helps you be more present in you as you go through the day. And it also helps release swirling thoughts that sometimes take a lot of energy from us, but we are mostly unaware of it. I could go on and on that, so I'll stop here for that.
No, I appreciate it. And I know it's slightly unorthodox, but I think the book is very evidence-based, but also just has a lot of practical, try this, 7 minutes of social media a day, try this breath exercise. And you pull from a wide, there are many, many practices here, some scientific, some that have spiritual roots. And I really do appreciate that for the times we live in, I think practical guides, many of these, the need to return to some of this embodiment is in some ways a modern phenomenon. We were talking about this earlier, where, a joyful price of, a growth in productivity and living style is that we, unlike many of our ancestors, we aren't encountering the bitter cold or the bear in the woods and the things that called us into a presence of attention. We can regulate the temperature of the room, and you could not notice that it's raining till you step outside and get rained on in a way that maybe was different for previous generations. And so I think in this modern space, we need to cultivate more of these practices to return to awareness that maybe were part of daily living when you were working outside. And so I think there is a distinctly 2025 need for more tools and more opportunities for people to come back into their bodies. I was really struck by the book. I want to talk a little bit about connection. Much of the guidance you're giving is for people to step into complete presence in their bodies, see the sea within. But really, I had not made the deep connection. I work in listening a ton, listening to the families, building governments that are better at listening and engaging. And I had not seen the through line through InnSæi that it's actually if you cannot listen to other people with a depth unless you have visibility onto this sea within. And so, I think the times we live in, this is a very perhaps American perspective, just call out for deeper connection with each other. Plenty of evidence on the disconnection in the States. But also having you really link that to the practices of connection with ourselves, I think is an important and next step. There's this beautiful sentence I love you have, and you have so many good metaphors from nature. We'll start with this, and then maybe we can talk about mycelia or have you read some other pieces from the ecosystem. But the light in our lives increases when we are seen by the people we love, and we can be generous in spirit with others. You know that feeling when you are all lit up, when you have sparkle in your eyes and you look radiant, or even better, when you're on fire. I'd love for you to draw out a bit more about how this connection internally does enable our connection in the world.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's like this phenomenon that you've read. It's beautiful, but it's also like super urgent that we think about that today. So we co-regulate as a species. Neurologically we co-regulate. We can also use a different discipline and say we are social animal. We need social connection to live and thrive. And we know today that loneliness, we know what COVID brought to so many people. There was this disconnection and loneliness. And when people were forced or told to stay in their home because they couldn't move around as usual because of COVID, we have never had as many people Google on the internet, how can I make my brain start working again? Stuff like that. So, and that's very interesting because that means we co-regulate as a species. So when I see you, Tara, when you walk into a room and I'm the person receiving you and I see you, I look you in the eye and I say, hi, Tara, how are you? And I notice you and you notice that I notice you and we have a good relationship and it makes you feel good, right? As opposed to you walking into a room and I pretend you don't exist, or I receive you in a very hostile way, it will affect your nervous system. So let's imagine, we now know that a lot of us are suffering from anxiety. We actually have the virtual algorithms, some of them geared towards increasing anxiety. We have these researches done on young people and older people as well. And so what happens if you grow up anxious? You don't know how to be different than anxious. And the people around you are anxious and they co-regulate in an anxious way. How can you know what it's like to be not anxious? And the reason why I'm saying anxious again and again is because I think being anxious can be a very normal state of mind, as long as you have other types of states of mind with it. But when we are anxious or stressed, or we feel like we are under a lot of pressure, it becomes much harder for us to access our intuition. And so human connectedness is like this, it's almost like oxygen. We need it in order to live and we thrive. And we know from experience that when people they start to work on TV, they are on screen and they are hosts of TV shows. If they are in love, it just works better and people are more attracted to them. So it's that heart opening, when you feel like you belong, when you feel like you are loved, you have love to give, and you have something to give in terms of knowledge or advice, or you want to support other people. It changes the whole dynamic in human relationships and intuition, and that part of our intelligence really needs engagement with the real world in order to thrive and be built. And I think what you mentioned earlier about our ability to be exposed to nature, the forces of nature, as opposed to machines or whatever, it's actually very important for us to think about it, because I think that the state of our planet, we just heard this week that we have crossed 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries, which means that planet Earth is losing her capacity to renew her energy. It's a very serious thing. And I am one of those people who I really believe that because the state of our climate is a man-made situation. And I really believe that there is a relationship between our neglect of our inner world, our intellectual, emotional, and spiritual capacity, our ability to see the context of things and how they interrelate, instead of seeing the world as a fragmented, like heap of fragments, and we are just an island in ourselves and we're only here for us. There's a huge difference between the two. So that is something that I'm curious about. And I like to explore, and I like to talk about in a grounded and serious way.
I really love your drawing on deep science about nature. This book, for folks who haven't read it, does a tour on everything from mycelia, the power of behind many plants and mushrooms, to photosynthesis. There's just the range of learning from the nature that we're part of is really an extra beautiful part of the book. I also was struck with some themes you hit that appear in Rick Rubin's beautiful book on creativity, and that I think sometimes people think about creative as being like whimsical and lightning strikes you, and you make a deep case based on your own research and that of several others that and Rick Rubin makes this in his book as a musician and producer, that creativity is often about creating the conditions for creativity, and that in conditions of duress and disembodiment that they don't happen. And there's a study you cite I thought was fascinating, that more than 30,000 scientific studies were reviewed and interviews were conducted that found that creativity was this critical skill of executives in a fast-paced world, and also discovered that creativity was the hardest, one of the most extremely difficult things to train people in.
Yeah.
And this resonates with me greatly, but thinking about how creativity takes work, and that being in creating the conditions, being in a state of flow, as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work elevates. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the relationship between kind of alignment and intuition and creativity.
Yeah, thank you. I love that, and I love the fact that you bring Rick Rubin's book into this, and the research with one of my interviewees, Mark Pollock, whom I interview in the book. He pointed this research out to me, and this idea is that creativity is not a skill that is taught, like you would teach how to calculate or analyze or compare or something like that. Creativity and intuition come from a similar universe, a similar world. Intuition, creativity, imagination, these are all like sisters and brothers, and they come from that kind of see within world. So it's more like creating the condition and circumstances for creativity to flourish. So one of the things that work against creativity, let's say in businesses, in the workplace, in education, is when we are solely focused on being deliberate, planning the outcome before we start, no time for reflection, mind wandering, or exploring, trial and error. This is some of the things that have the effects to block intuition. When I created the education program Prisma, which Kyle mentioned earlier, wow, 17 years ago. We created the condition or the constellation. It was like there was a house, there were rooms that we taught in. We made sure that there were lots of books. This was just after the financial recession. A lot of people had lost their jobs and they had like dark clouds over their heads. They had perhaps lost their homes as well. There was a lot of disappointment, disillusionment. So we created an environment that was warm, friendly, beautiful. We brought artwork to have in there. We had these, we had the ability to play music, and so on and so forth. And we really dived into a cross-disciplinary studies in a very unconventional way, where people really were trained to sharpen their inner compass, to navigate different worlds of schools of thought, worlds of knowledge, but at the end of the day, to come up with their own creation. So it was not just about learning what they were taught and repeated, but to really build beyond that and always checking in with themselves. And a lot of the work that we did during this period is something I also share in my book. So we created the condition. And one of the things we did, because for creative people, it doesn't work to say, if you solve this problem, I'll raise your salaries or give you free parking space for a month. That really doesn't help. It's all about intrinsic motivation. And so trust and just creating the condition for creativity to flow. And also to, so without going into more detail than that, then I think it's very important. And all my life, I remember from being a young girl in school until today, I really think we can do a better job in elevating creativity in our school systems, in our workplace, and also this trust and space for people to take time to put into words what it is that they are sense making, because that's such a big part of allowing things to emerge from the sea within.
I have found, where I think we're both parents, that I've really encountered how creativity is beaten out of adults when my world is dominated by small children. And I'll never forget like a journey to the first time my eldest went to New York City and she saw steam rising from the grates in Manhattan. I think Kyle's in New York City. She was like, obviously there's a dragon that lives beneath the city. And we must, she's like face down on the grate. It's just kind of gross. Like we must find it. And it really occurred to me, like, that's just really interesting and creative. And the process of how deep can we get to discover whether it is or isn't a dragon, it's beautiful. And all around, I kept thinking, like, more time I spend with children, the more their minds are in a dominantly creative space. And I was so fascinated when in the book to get to this part where you describe a NASA study. NASA's in the process of trying to hire more creative scientists, and they develop a test to identify the capacity for creativity and divergent thinking, and that the test results were shocking to NASA leaders, showing 98% of 5-year-olds fell into the genius category of imagination, and that you could watch this percentage drop dramatically, 12% for 15-year-olds, 2% for adults. I read this statistic to my children last night as a reminder, just hang on to the creativity. But that as we go through the school system and we gain the rules of workforces, we aren't necessarily organizing to the creative space. And so I love that you've brought this through, the connection on that. We have a robust set of really interesting questions, so I'll make sure we get to those. I guess I'd love for you to, I'll make a confession, which is I am one of the people who did dismiss for many, many years intuition. Not that I didn't have a very strong feeling in my body of, I don't think this is the right candidate, or I think we're about to make a bad decision, but that I often, went back to the spreadsheet to analyze or did a few more rounds of interview. And it's only by noting the kind of data collected in my body that it's not an either or, but that this is a kind of wisdom of points of energy that is big and important and can guide us. And so this book's been really important for me, even in thinking about my own leadership style, my own organizational management, that that which is felt, that connection between folks is really important knowledge, and it makes for great organizations and leaders. And so I think you're giving the science behind it is a big contribution to this. Maybe, I mean, Kyle, you can do them more. I'm happy to just jump into some of these questions because they're really fascinating. I think maybe starting at the end, Jacob says there's so many takeaways from this brilliant dialogue. Hrund, my own journey this year has been about recognizing the difference between healing and reviving, a concept that really resonates with the book's title. But the question is, how is the practice of InnSæi not just a tool for personal wellness, but a necessary act of systemic resilience that prevents us from old patterns of burnout and ineffective action?
Wow, that's a great question. So InnSæi it's not just about, so the InnSæi framework concept and the book delves into where intuition comes from and how it develops over time. So if we just think about the sea within our unconscious mind, it's not locked up in a box. It is always conversing and engaging with the world around us. So it's very unclear where something ends and something else begins. So it's that kind of ecosystem thinking. So I think that's the mindset we need to really adopt. So when I am deeply connected within to my insight, my intuition, aligned, some people talk about alignment. So for the people listening, think about the words that you relate to. When you're deeply connected within, you are then able to connect with others and the world around you. So when this happens, there's a shift in the center of gravity, as opposed to when we live in our heads or we are constantly reacting to something. We don't even trust our own judgment. We are always thinking about what we should be thinking about things. When we find this deeper inner security and inner compass in ourselves, we shift the center of gravity so that I am better able to connect with you, Tara, or other people, or people I work with, or people in a country, or in another country I've never visited. I will feel what it's like to be a human. I will understand that when people lose hope, when people lose loved ones, that it's pain that I know and I keep in myself as well. I will also innately understand that if we destroy the natural resources, it's going to be really bad for us as well, because we are part of nature, we are dependent on nature. It doesn't make any sense when you have this innate understanding of how we are all interconnected. And I think that's the core. That's the core of intuition seen through the lens of InnSæi. And I just want to say, because we don't have much time, but I just want to say, if we had longer time, I would love to take you through the strands of this is what science says, this is what earth science says, this is what psychology says, because there is a lot of knowing around this. But our ability to synthesize and synchronize this knowledge we haven't given it enough focus or attention or whatever it is. It's all there. And so I think that is the biggest that's the most important thing, I think, for both, because strong inner compass gives us resilience, Jacob. It gives us resilience, right? And when we are collectively resilient in the intention to allow humans and nature to thrive, that becomes much more of a natural unfolding process, right?
I'm gonna maybe I'll give you two questions, Hrund, in the meantime while you think about them. One is, in the age where the future of work is changing, how can we help young people see intuition not as a soft skill, but as a foundational form of intelligence? And I think you in your work you connected with Bill George from Harvard Business School, who suggests that Hrund's advice can change your life in a world of AI. Intuition will be your defining difference. But maybe I'd love for you to speak to this future piece. And yeah, let's stop and just do that one.
To this future piece, and you're talking about for young people in the workplace or entering the workplace for them, yeah. How can we get them, if I remember correctly, to trust more in their intuition and not see it as a soft skill? So young people are as varied as middle-aged and old and whatever people, I think. There's variety within every age group. I've noticed the biggest number of followers on my Instagram are people between 25 and 35 in the last weeks. I don't know why, but that's, so I do think that that's just an indication, but I also know that young people are often take intuition seriously, but what I think they need, which I have needed, and I think people in any age need, is to learn what intuition is in a holistic way, so that we can align with it and hone it, because it's so important that we don't confuse it with assumptions and prejudices and biases and wishful thinking. And I really want to repeat that, because a lot of people are worried that if we start to trust our intuition more, it's going to be more prejudice and biases. We don't want that. So I'm saying intuition goes beyond that. It's really it's important that we learn that. So I think also for us who are managers and leaders and mentors for young people in the workplace, do we believe in intuition? Do we believe that it's not just a soft skill? So I think that's like, we got to walk the talk. If we say it's not a soft skill, but we behave as it is, it's not going to translate well for them. So they learn from us as well. So I think there's I don't know where this question, from whom this question comes, but I have this feeling to also say, why don't we all this week or tomorrow, the end of this week, sit down with a young person or a group of young people and ask them, do they take intuition seriously? Do they think it's important? And I think that that would be a very interesting conversation to have.
And there's one more kind of definitional question here from Rebecca, which is, how do you perceive the relationship between intuition and consciousness? Can intuition be seen as a direct expression or expansion of consciousness in creative processes?
I love this question. So let me tell you one thing before I say anything. There is so little that we know about consciousness. There is so little we know about the brain. And there is so little, I think, that we know about intuition. So we need to, I just want to say that we should be on our knees and be humble towards all these things. But some cultures don't divide between consciousness and the unconscious. I think that's very interesting, right? But I'm brought up in a culture that makes a difference between conscious and unconscious. And I think that I think intuition, what I've seen is intuition is like we intuit something that is brewing inside the sea within, and it comes to the surface as intuitive hints or intuitions. And intuitive hints, intuition is all things that are giving us information, and then it kind of says to us, here you go. It's up to you to listen to it. It's up to you to explore if it makes any sense for you. It's up to you to double check, due diligence if this is something you want to pursue. Sometimes we get intuitions that are telling us to do stuff that we are not ready to do. I've had that in my personal life. And then sometimes we just have to say like, okay, I understand this is what is brewing inside me. I'm not ready to go for this now, but to allow it to stay with you. So intuition is closely connected to consciousness. It helps us interpret consciousness. And we have scientists who will say there is no consciousness. So I just want to, it's very open, but it's definitely connected. And in the work that I do, what I emphasize is intuition is the effective use of unconscious information to take better decisions and actions. That's one of my favorite definitions from a scientist, Joel Pearson, on intuition. So yes, definitely, but I'm not sure if intuition is so picky about what's unconscious and what conscious when it comes to processing the information.
There's one more question that's just so fabulous. I'm going to squeeze it in here, which is from Amy. It says, how we talk about intuition like it's fully formed and you have it or you don't, can feel like it plays into a fixed mindset rather than something we grow and develop. How do you help encourage people to build on whatever intuition they have? And I'm going to encourage you to remind people about a course you're launching that you can find out more about in the chat.
Yeah, so So I think this is also a very interesting question, because the more I work on intuition, and the more that I learn to hone my own intuition, and the more I read into the research around intuition, the more I realize that having a well-honed intuition always requires a level of critical thinking. So, you know, it's I think we can say, like, I just have this intuition, it's just like this, and I'm convinced. And then we do open up our minds to listening to 1 to 10 other perspectives. Our intuition is very likely to change or take a different shape or form or timeline. And we may also change our mind. So I think we always have to be open to that. Research shows, broadly speaking, that a well-trained master of intuition is no less reliable than well-calculated, analyzed, processed information through some other means. So both can be right and both can be wrong. And I think our forever journey is to practice finding that balance, because intuition develops over time. Everything changes constantly, we with it. But when we really put in the focus of aligning with our intuition, it's like, you know, tuning into our soul's frequency as we navigate life, which is constantly changing. So I think it's that kind of level of critical thinking that's useful, not to assume that you're right without considering, you know, other options and other perspectives, because there are multiple perspectives all the time, not just 2 or whatever. Yeah, so I am just you know, today, a soft launch this morning. I am launching the InnSæi signature experience, which is a 9 weeks online course, which is a combination of self-paced learning and also direct mentorship with me, which we will be announcing in the coming days more openly. It starts on the 16th of October. And I really encourage you who are interested in learning how to align with and hone your intuition through the framework of InnSæi to take a look at this invitation. And there should be a link in the chat now, directing you to that course. And I'm super excited about it. You know, after my book came out in all these languages and around the world, I really did the kind of act to listen what it is that people want, what are people looking for, what do we need, like what would be my best offering at this point in time, and this is what we came up with. So super excited to share that with you all.
I know we're coming on time. I just want to express my gratitude to you, Hrund, to the audience today. This is you have offered the research and work that you've done over the years in numerous forms. There's a film. This book is a beautiful, actionable book, and the course. I mean, maybe I just close with something I find so beautiful in the book, because I want to honor that we are living in a very fragmented time. And so I think the practices which bring people into presence are as important as maybe they've ever been. And you write, when we experience the world as fragmented, it is because we've lost our innate sense of interconnectedness. We no longer feel we are an integral part of the world we live in. We are a fragment in a pile of fragments. And we lose our sense of belonging, purpose, and kinship with other living beings. And I think you have made a bunch of offerings on how to bring us back into connection with ourselves, with those we love, with all living things. And so I'm really grateful for your contributions, for your friendship to the Scandinavia House, for making them accessible to others here, for a live breathing exercise presence here at lunchtime. I'm just so grateful to have had this virtual fireside chat with you, Hrund.
Thank you so much, Tara. The privilege is all mine. And thank you for doing this with me and doing it so thoughtfully, and just such an honor. And thank you for being my friend, and everyone, thank you for coming. And if you have any thoughts or questions, then please send them my way. I'm the only one with this name in the world, so you'll be quick to find me online.
And on behalf of Scandinavia House, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today as well, especially Hrund and Tara for doing this for us. So thank you, and I hope to see everyone either virtually or in person at Scandinavia House. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.